And I'm joined by Stephanie Chevalier Crockett, who is my assistant, who usually works on citywide planning issues in my capacity as chair of the planning committee. But this evening is stepping in for Alice Fife, FYFE, who will be my assistant, who's helping me with the local planning files. She just wasn't able to make it tonight. And Jeff, you're with Novatech.
That's me.
Amazing. So we're going to get a presentation, then we'll open it up to a Q&A. This is the public open house. So this is a good opportunity to get the information that you need to craft your arguments that you'll be making to the planner who is, I've forgotten, who's the planner on this one?
Jack
Uh,
Smith.
Right,
yeah,
Jack. Jack will is the city planner who's been assigned to the file. He will make a recommendation after hearing from internal and external stakeholders as to whether city council should approve or reject the application. What we generally see is that if the city planner has got concerns about whether or not this meets the policies and guidelines that guide development in Ottawa, they'll work with the developer to uh, resolve those rather than bring forward a refusal application. But I'm going to assume in this case that this one is probably going to go fairly quickly. But your objective tonight, who are participating, is to gather the information you need in order to be able to make the planning rationale arguments that this does or doesn't meet with the various different policies and plans that the city has. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you and walk us through what the developer is proposing.
sure. Thanks. So I'll just share my screen, make sure everybody can see and hear me. I think that's
We
probably the case. I think from checking through before. So yeah, thanks for the introduction. My name is Jeff Kelly. I'm a planner with Novatech, and I'm here on behalf of the owner to discuss an application for rezoning on the property located at 627 Kirkwood Avenue. So just for a bit of quick context, the site is located on the east side of Kirkwood Avenue, and it's in Kitchissippi Ward. It's shown on the image before you here, outlined in red. So it's located in an area that's bounded by Buell Street to the north, Sebring Avenue to the south, Kirkwood Avenue to the west, and Westview Avenue to the east. As you can see, probably from this plan, the site is currently vacant. And it is fairly large for the neighborhood in terms of its size, with its approximately 64 meters of frontage along Kirkwood Avenue and a size of approximately 2,013 square meters in area. So just to have a quick look here at the view from Kirkwood Avenue, just from Google Street View taken last year, and just to show that the property is currently vacant and awaiting redevelopment. So I'll just pull that context back out a little bit further here, just to show the location of the subject site in that broader context. And we've also put here some distance radii of 300 meters, which is approximately a 5-minute walk, 600 meters, which is approximately a 10-minute walk, and 900 meters, which is approximately a 15-minute walk. And those are shown in yellow. Hopefully you can see them. I'll just go through each of those radii and kind of explain what's there. So within 300 meters of the site, we've got several restaurants. There's some commercial amenities and a grocery store located in the Hampton Park Plaza, which is just to the south of the subject site along Kirkwood Avenue. And there's also access to Hampton Park, which is located within the 300 meters to the east of the subject site. Going out further to the 600-meter radius, the subject site is located within that radius beside Highway 417 and Carling Avenue. In that area, there's a range of commercial and employment uses along the Carling Avenue corridor. The area generally consists primarily of residential uses in a range of different forms. There's a number of community and recreational amenities such as schools, parks, and community centers, all in that area. And I'll also mention that Carling Avenue is planned as a future LRT route with at-grade crossings at Kirkwood Avenue, which will provide connections to local transit routes and stations along the broader O train network. So pulling out again to the 900-meter radius, there's a number of employment uses in this radius as well, and commercial amenities along Carling Avenue. Then looking further to the north, there's Richmond Road, which has line 1 of the O train network, and further to that, the Ottawa River. So looking to the east, we have the Ottawa Hospital Civic Campus and the Central Experimental Farm. So now, as that context relates to the planning background, We'll just note that the proximity of the site to that diverse mix of land uses, having the daily needs that can be kind of accessed and met within 15 minutes walking distance from home. It's generally aligning with the 15-minute neighborhood idea that the City of Ottawa is looking to incorporate through policies of the official plan. And that's including the local services, shopping, schools, employment, and recreational opportunities. And then again, as I've mentioned, the support of transit and active transportation opportunities that are consistent with the growth objectives of the OP. And as I also mentioned a moment ago, Carling Avenue is planned as a future LRT route with the Acquarie crossings at Kirkwood. So paired with the existing bus stops along the frequent route, I think it's 51 shown on the plan there. That's all within 300 meters of the subject site, and there's a bus stop currently at Clare Street and Kirkwood. So that proximity to a range of transit options in the area does represent a 5-minute walking distance or less for those residents of this property to access frequent street transit from their home, all of which is consistent with growth objectives of the official plan. So with respect to the official plan, I'll just note that the subject site is within the interurban transect, and it's designated as minor corridor on Schedule B2 of the official plan. And the subject site is also located within the evolving neighborhood overlay. Just to highlight a few policies from the official plan for you, this is with respect to building heights and built form transitions specific to the interurban transect and minor corridor designation. And with these policies before you hear, I'll just note that the Kirkwood Avenue right-of-way is approximately 20 meters in width where it abuts the subject site. So with that, and according to the policies shown on the screen here, a building height of up to 6 stories or approximately 20 meters is generally supported by policies of the official plan for the subject property. Leading to the conceptual site plan. So I'll go through this in a bit of detail just to kind of provide that context to folks. So it is proposed to construct a 6-story mixed-use building on the subject site. The building will include 2 commercial units on the ground floor and a total of 76 residential dwelling units. So I will break those down. The mix that's being proposed at the moment is 33 one-bedroom units, 27 one-bedroom plus den units, and 16 two-bedroom units. The main entrance for this property will be provided off of Kirkwood on the west side of the building, and there will also be separate individual entrances for 3 of the ground floor residential units. If you can see my cursor, it's basically where these 4 large trees are shown. There's 3 entrances there, and then immediately to the left on your screen, that's where the main lobby entrance to the building will be. All of the units in the building will have a balcony or porch for amenity areas for residents. Within the rear yard, there'll be a mix of soft and hard landscaping, and that will also have access to the rear off of Kirkwood Avenue, or it can be taken through the building lobby. So there is an opportunity through our initial kind of conceptual look at this property that some of the existing trees and plantings located along the rear property line should be possible to retain, and we will do so where possible to provide that existing screening that's already there, particularly to the abutting properties to the east, which is at the top of your screen. With respect to parking, there's a 2-level underground parking garage being provided here with 58 parking spaces for residents and visitors. So the parking spaces will be accessible via a driveway and ramp off of Kirkwood. And if you can see my cursor, it's just where this driveway is shown here on the left side of the building. So breaking that down, it's 52 off-street resident parking spaces and 6 parking spaces for visitors. With respect to bicycle parking, there are 74 bicycle parking spaces provided, and they will be located partially within a bike room on the ground floor and partially within a bike room located in the underground parking garage, just to make up that space. I know there's 76 units, and we will look at adding 2 more just to make sure we get to that 1-to-1 ratio that we like to see for properties of this size. With respect to an outdoor amenity area for residents, it's also provided in the rear yard and on the roof of this building. So with respect to the current zoning, the subject site is zoned minor institutional subzone A. And although policies of the official plan generally do permit a mid-rise mixed-use building on this property, that current zone does not permit the proposed land use before you today. So in order to develop the property with the proposed building, a zoning bylaw amendment is required, and that results in the application that's into the city at the moment. So with respect to what we're suggesting for rezoning, it is to rezone the property to a general mixed use zone, and that's to incorporate the mixed use commercial units and residential on the property in a mid-rise form. And there will be site specific provisions requested. So I'll go through those just slowly so everyone can hear. They are to permit a minimum front yard setback of 2 meters, a minimum interior side yard setback of 3 meters on each side of the building, north and south, to permit a maximum building height of 20 meters, to permit a maximum floor space index of 2.8, to permit a minimum landscape area abutting a street of 2 meters, and that's just a function of the front yard setback. And then also, as I had just previously mentioned, to permit a communal amenity area on the rooftop terrace, part of which is inside the building, part of which is outside on the Kirkwood frontage. So further to the applications, a separate site plan control application will be required and hasn't been submitted at this point. This application is just for rezoning, and that will be required to fully facilitate the development on this property. And I'm sure, as many of you are also aware, there is a new zoning bylaw being put into force, hopefully in the new year. And I'll just note that we're also asking for the same building height that is envisioned for the CM1 zone on this property, which is 20 meters, being recommended by staff in the draft zoning bylaw. And we can certainly go through some of that in more detail as I get through the presentation. So I'll just skip to the next slide. And some additional policies here. So just a few things that we wanted to note with respect to building height and transition. And this one specifically to the urban design policies in the official plan that are more broad across the city. So I'll just note here that the subject site and the abutting lots immediately to the north and south are all designated minor corridor in the official plan. And as I've noted before, the minor corridor policies generally do permit building heights up to mid-rise. So the proposed development has been designed to anticipate intensification on abutting properties to the north and south from the existing low-rise to a mid-rise built form. And that could take place over the medium to long term, just depending on what property owners look to do there. To the east, there are existing low-rise buildings that are located on abutting lots at the rear, and those have frontage on Westview Avenue. Those properties to the east are designated neighborhood in the official plan and are anticipated to remain as low-rise. So it's important for us to note that the 6-story building here has been designed to provide a 7.5 meter rear yard setback, building step backs and material changes above the 4-story to try to create that transition from low-rise to mid-rise in the rear yard to make sure that the transition is complementing those existing buildings to the east. And I'll go through that in just in a bit more detail here with a visual. So specifically as it relates to that transition and the built form in the rear yard. So the application, the image here, is showing the application of a 45-degree angular plane. Just for reference, the front lot line is on Kirkwood is on the right side of your screen, and the rear lot line is on the left. So the existing low-rise buildings located to the east on the left-hand side of your page, they are, as I said, anticipated to remain low-rise. So noting the GM zone that's being proposed does not require an angular plane in the zoning provisions, and that the maximum permitted building height for a three-unit dwelling in that neighboring R3R zone is 10.7 meters. We just wanted to show what that would look like as part of our application. So again, although it's not required, the proposed development is generally consistent with that 45-degree angular plane. And that is shown here as applied at that 10.7 meter building height across the rear of the property. And that's generally to provide some light into the rear yards of properties that are abutting to the east. So we're just trying to show that that's still going to be possible with this transition. There's also a step back of the building above the fourth story. And I'll also note here just that the design that is shown before you here is not actually for site plan, so it is subject to change, particularly with respect to the mechanical penthouse. It might get smaller through a site plan application and comments there. So just to make that note to the public. I'll also note that existing trees and plantings, as I had mentioned before, will be retained where it's possible in the rear yard and along the rear lot line. And that emphasis will be placed on screening the property between the subject site and abutting lots on all sides to the north, east, and south, but particularly to the east where those low-rise buildings are expected to remain. And also just finally mention that the proposed increase to building height does maintain the intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw. And then just quickly with respect to building height across the street, we'll note that there is a existing high-rise building to the northwest of the property across Kirkwood. And it's a 6-story building is being proposed on the subject property. And basically it's just to note that it's a mix of built forms that is already kind of present in the neighborhood. There's high-rise, there's low-rise, and this mid-rise built form is intended to fit well in this neighborhood and kind of contribute to that variety of uses on the Kirkwood frontage. And then just a couple views of the building in terms of rendering. So this is from the northwest, looking down towards the 417. And I'm not the architect. Unfortunately, he was unable to join us tonight, but I'll give you a couple pieces of sort of the explanation that they provided for our planning rationale and in the urban design brief. So just noting that the building has been designed to frame Kirkwood within that 6-story building height that's permitted by the official plan, and providing some appropriate setbacks and step backs, as well as building materials, a variety of building materials that kind of fit well with the street and provide that pedestrian scale. The active frontage on Kirkwood is intended to provide some direct connections to the street for commercial uses and for access to the residential lobby, as I had previously mentioned. And that variety of building materials and the building setbacks along the above the 3rd story along Kirkwood and above the 4th story in the rear yard are intended to try to provide that visual transition, complementing the neighboring buildings, and providing that human scaled environment, particularly on the frontage along Kirkwood, just to maintain the reference of those low-rise buildings to the north and south. And then finally, a view from the other perspective, looking from the southwest to the north, and just noting that, again, the design is conceptual and subject to refinement, but the intent here is to use a variety of colors for facade materials, providing a significant proportion of glazed surfaces here, and also providing some soft landscape treatments surrounding the building at grade to create that sort of welcoming environment for pedestrians and people passing by the building along Kirkwood. And also just noting that similar treatments will be used in the rear yard for landscaping. And then just to wrap up the formal presentation here, just note that the proposed development is generally aligned with growth objectives for settlement areas as set out by provincial policy and the City of Ottawa official plan. And also noting that the suggested zoning implements those policies of the official plan for the interurban transect and the minor corridor designation to facilitate a 6-story mixed-use building along Kirkwood. And again, just mentioning near planned rapid transit within walking distance of many amenities, businesses, and retail uses for basically to meet the daily needs of residents within that 15-minute neighborhood idea. So with that, we'll just say thanks for your attention and look forward to any comments or questions from members of the public. Thanks.
Yep, I'll turn it over to Stephanie, but my son is 20, he's going on 25, and I've completely forgotten how loud small children are when they
You can hear it.
this time we heard it. It is no skin off my nose. It's been a long time though. Holy cow. It brings me back. Steph.
I'll keep it pretty quick just to do some housekeeping for anyone who came after we started or who is attending one of these open houses for the first time. We're a smaller group tonight, so me and Jeff are going to sort of open up the floor for kind of questions. We're not going to do the allowed to talk or just the Q&A. So for anyone who's here, you're going to see in the next couple minutes, if you'll give me some time, a prompt to ask you to join as a panelist, and that will allow you to speak verbally. If you don't want to be captured on video on the recording, you can just turn off your video on the bottom left side. And if you don't want to show up verbally or on video at all, we've got the Q&A open, and you can put your questions in written up there, and we'll still be able to answer them. The only sort of thing I'll ask is just put up your hand if you want to ask a question, and I'll just keep track of who's going and then sort of go along that way, just so everyone gets a chance to ask their questions and sort of, get what they'd like out of this public meeting. And for anyone who knows neighbors who couldn't make it, we will be posting this online after the meeting, hopefully by end of tomorrow. You can find the meeting by either searching Kitchissippi Ward on YouTube, and it will be up there. And if you'd rather, you can just email us and ask for the link, and we'll send it along as soon as it's up. So with that, I'll start promoting folks. If people want to start raising their hands for questions, we can kind of go in that order to make it a bit easier, but give it a minute or two and you should see the prompts coming up. Okay. So Lauren.
Step, while you're doing that, Victor has a question. So if you want to continue just giving people the prompts there. Victor is asking, please remind how many parking spaces compared to how many units?
So there's 58 parking spaces, 52 resident parking spaces, and 6 for visitors. And there are 76 units. And then I'll also note, before we actually made the application, our client was looking to do 1 level. And he actually realized that he should probably do 2, just because of the location. So he wanted to make sure that it was a little bit more feasible for folks that still have cars, just because we're transitioning now, obviously, to out of the car-based society, a little bit into more of a transit-focused one. But he wanted to make sure that we're not going to be leaving folks that do want to have a car behind in this particular application.
Thank you. I see. Have you finished stuff? No, she's still working on that.
Yeah.
So, Lauren, I'm turning on the allowed to talk. Please go ahead and ask your question. I hope you're well. And we can hear you, Lauren.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Good. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for moving the date. I have a number of questions. Some of are things that are just not included in the presentation, and some are dealing with a few concerns. I don't know if you want them one by one and you'll answer them, or you want them all up front.
Can you go
maybe
one by one?
Yeah, one by one.
Is this rental or condos?
I'm pretty sure they're going to be rentals. I can confirm, but I'm relatively sure of that.
Okay. You didn't mention anything about whether any of these are what's considered affordable. And when the maximum size is 2 bedrooms and not even 2 bedrooms plus a den, why are there no units at 3 bedrooms that could be geared towards families?
I'd have to leave that and take it away for a response from our client, from the architect. Generally speaking, this is just the product that they're looking to put forward. And I also mentioned it's not part of a site plan application at this point, so things could change when we go through that process. But this is what's being presented today. With respect to affordability, I don't know of anything specific at this point with respect to affordable units in this building. That would be kind of more at the site plan stage as well.
Because I know when the city talks about they want more density everywhere, they are also looking for affordability, and that is an issue in our neighborhood in particular. Given Westboro is not a inexpensive part of the city. Why the 2 commercial units? Is that a city requirement, or is that something you want to do?
No requirement. The client is looking to provide those units.
Does he have people who are or companies that are lined up to go into those? It's just you often hear developers would rather not have to put in commercial, and since Kirkwood's not a particularly commercial street, it sort of seemed a little surprising.
For sure.
And with limited parking, I'm not sure, whether there's a demand for a commercial there. Of the variances you're asking for, I appreciate, we're going up to the 20 meters, and I'm not going to fight battles from years ago. But the one that caused me the most, raised the most concern was the side yard setback going from 5 meters to 3 meters, which I presume is the barrier or the distance from the houses on the north side or the south side of the building. And what sort of impact that's going to have on those existing homes being so close between the shade, because Kirkwood is not truly north-south, even though we think of it as north-south. It's more, I guess, going from the northwest southeast. So the sun does swing back there, so it's going to have an impact on the afternoon sun on those houses, plus privacy. So in your back, you're giving enough of a buffer. But on the side, that seems awfully tight. And I did sort of muse, if you gave it 5 meters instead of 3, you could cut back the number of units by 2 units on each floor, but also turn either a 1-bedroom into a 2-bedroom or a 2-bedroom into a 3-bedroom. Sort of taking that space, half of it would become, the setback, and half of it could be attached to another unit. So my concern about that setback is my main concern there. Will there be charging stations in the parking garage? Because much as our city councilors think we're giving up cars, many people do not want to give up cars, but they may switch to EVs. So I would hope there's some EV charging stations down there. And we have seen in some of the developments in the neighborhood where the developer takes over the front of the street or half a lane or a lane to help with their construction. Particularly on Kirkwood, not on Carling, we've seen that. Carling and Churchill is during the construction the intent for Kirkwood to be narrowed because of construction requirements. And I'll leave my questions at that.
Okay, I've got 3 that I think I hadn't immediately touched on. You just listed them, and thanks for that. So I think we're starting with the interior side yards. Basically, the interior side yards are being reduced from 5 to 3 on both of the north and south sides. That's based on the effective setbacks between the existing buildings and what's being proposed, being somewhere between 5.5 and 6 meters on the north, and about 5.7 meters on the south. So there is a relatively great distance, not great distance, there's a relatively adequate distance between the building and the existing buildings to the north and south.
Have you had that discussion with the neighbor? Do they consider it adequate?
So that will be part of the zoning bylaw amendment application, and certainly it's being raised tonight. So thanks for the question.
And if I might ask Jeff, I know there's 2 Jeffs. Jeff Kelly, you mentioned the new zoning bylaw will go up to allow 20 meters.
Correct.
Is it, and this is for Jeff Lieber, is the new zoning bylaw going to allow the side yard setback to go from 5 to 3?
And I'm sorry, that's deeper in the weeds than I have on top of my head. Stephanie, however, is a mad genius. Steph, do you know off the top of your head?
Not off the top, but I can grab it very quickly if we'd like to.
You're good.
I can help with that. The current draft right now, and Steph, you can confirm if you're looking to do that, it would be helpful. I was looking through it today. The CM1 zone interior side yards are 1.5 meters. It's actually less than what's being provided in this application today.
Okay.
And I'll note I'm not certain our client is looking to do that. Just I'll put that out there. I think 3 meters is what they're comfortable with.
Okay, because I'm not sure if I lived that house, I would want a 6-story building that close.
Just so I understand, you're saying that the city is planning on reducing side yard requirements to less than what the developer is proposing.
That's my
That,
understanding. Yeah.
that's correct. And it's also note that the property is not zoned with the CM1 zone in the draft bylaw right now, just as it's not zoned with the current, I think it's R4 to the north and south of this property. It's zoned institutional in the draft zoning bylaw as well, so that there would still be a rezoning required. But I'll note that the north and the south are currently planned as a CM1 zone, which is a minor corridor one.
Does your client actually own the property at this stage?
Yes, my understanding is he does.
Because I remember the for sale sign, but I don't remember actually seeing a sold sign on the property. I don't know if Victor, you're closer to it than I am, if you remember that.
Didn't see it. Okay. Can we move on to Adam? He's been
Adam, I'm
waiting.
just going to ask you to accept the allow to speak button, and then you should be good to go.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Great, thanks. I'm just very concerned about how this building is going to fit in the neighborhood. I am in one of the abutting homes, and um, although there is significant frontage along Kirkwood, the lot itself is not very deep. It's as deep as a normal home. So what that really means is that it doesn't allow for a lot of height transitions. So for example, the first 4 floors are going to go straight up, and then there's a slight transition, which really looks like it's set back enough to allow for a balcony, and then it's 2 more floors, and then it's um, the
Yeah.
HVAC stuff on the roof. So, this building is surrounded by 1 and 2 story homes, and it's going like if you were on Westview looking at my house, for example, all you're going to see is this huge building that is across, I think it's about 7 lots. So it's really going to change um, the whole like aesthetic of the neighborhood. And in the case where in the case where you've got surrounding homes, like 1 and 2 story homes, like my understanding is that the limit is 4 stories. Specifically, section 523 3D of the minor corridors. Because it says the height of such buildings may be limited further on lots too small to accommodate an appropriate height transition. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, because the lot is not very deep. Like, yes, it's got significant frontage, but because it's not very deep, it's not allowing for like setbacks. So I just want to kind of highlight like this building does not fit in the aesthetic of the neighborhood.
Okay, noted. I just wanted to point out, and I'll put it back up on the screen here. And again, I mentioned that the angular plane is not a requirement of the zone that we're requesting, the GM zone. There is in the official plan policies that speak to that transition being provided within the corridor. So this property is designated minor corridor. And what this is really trying to show is that the setback of 7.5 meters, which is the requirement in the GM zone being provided, and the permitted building height in the current zone, the R3R zone, which is where the properties to the east are located, that angular plane typically would be applied from that height. So that's what you're seeing here in red on the dotted line. And just to provide that transition within the corridor is being achieved here on this property, and that's basically one of the ways of providing that transition, as well as building materials, step backs above the 4th story, as you had mentioned, and landscape screening in the rear yard. So your points are well taken, but just that's what that transition is being provided by the proposed development.
I think, yeah. So, I mean, you say transition, but it's just going to be a sheer wall, like at the back of my property. And I'm not going to have any light. It's going to be in shadow mostly, except during like the summer months for the, the big, most of it, which will really affect my ability to enjoy my property. I have to say, I spend as much time outside as possible, because I like to eat outside and, um, yeah, I'm very concerned about the amount of light that my backyard's going to get.
Understood. And we'll take your comments into consideration.
I did have a follow-up question about the floor space index density, because for the property, it's going to be 2.8 as opposed to the usual 2.0 maximum. I was just wondering why it's 40% extra in this case.
It's just related to the size of the building on the lot, as floor space index is basically the lot area, and then as you apply that to the building footprint being built up, so that is just it did not meet the 2.0 FSI requirement, so that's essentially where that comes from. So we're requesting relief from that provision, as it does currently exist in the GM zone.
Okay, so that's sure that's fine that you're requesting an extra or like an
Relief.
amendment, but that's 40% bigger than what's the maximum is right now. So right now the maximum is 2, and you're asking for 2.8, which is 40% more than the max. Like that seems quite a big ask.
Okay, understood. I'll just take that away. I don't really have a further response.
Yeah, because that affects like the height because you're trying to increase it by so much.
It's mainly related to the length of the building in this case. Just that the 5 meter setbacks are not provided. Requesting relief for that. It's a kind of a sum of all the different parts being put together,
Mhm.
that creates that larger area. So again, your comments are noted, and we'll take them away.
Sure. I'd just like to add that 40% actually equals 2 extra floors. So if you had the 2.0, it would actually be 4 floors maximum, which is maybe more appropriate for the neighborhood.
Noted.
Okay, I'll let someone else speak.
Thanks, Adam. And we'll go to Victor in a second. And I'm just going to kind of with a quick interlude on our questions on the zoning for the area. So you were right, Jeff, that under sort of the new zoning for a minor corridor, it would be an interior yard minimum interior yard setback, side yard setback of 1.5. The only thing to note is just because the site actually has institutional zoning right now, it currently is coming in as institutional zoning in our new zoning bylaw. So when it's abutting any kind of neighborhood zone, it would be an interior side yard setback of 7.5 meters, actually. But that said, the stretch is minor corridor for the most part, but this, given sort of the previous use and being a synagogue, it had that institutional zoning. So that's what we're seeing it turn into. And for anyone who is interested in the new zoning bylaw, the area you're in right now, which if it's sort of going westward, I believe, or at least facing Westview, it's proposed to be N4B, which would be like 14 and a half meters, sort of in height. So you can kind of use that as you will for knowing what's coming, but obviously the case right now, it's institutional zoning and it's R3R sort of going that way. And I think sort of on the flip side as well, but I'll double check. So with that sort of spew of information for everybody, Victor, feel free to ask any questions.
Good. I'm unmuted. I'm always impressed by the people who understand the zoning bylaws and the upcoming zoning bylaws. And as much as I dealt with regulation in other fields of work, I find zoning regulation to be something quite extraordinary. I'll list a series of concerns, but I'll start with my just general view. There's such a thing as progress, there's such a thing as change, and we live with it. And I'm not going to say, not in my backyard. It's eventually going to come to my backyard for certain. I live on Hilson. But the question is, what is coming to the backyard? And I think the previous intervener or speaker began to mention what's coming for his backyard. I'm going to go through a series of concerns that I have. I was a former congregant at Young Israel, and so I know what that building was like. And I think a building on this site will actually be an improvement for the neighborhood, a building. I'm not persuaded that it's this building. One of the concerns that had often been expressed to Young Israel was the noise from its HVAC system. And I would signal that as being a concern with any building that is going to be going up, particularly this proposed building. Noise from HVAC, particularly if it's on the roof, which I imagine makes the most sense. And massing on the roof, it is going to have a very significant noise spillover to the neighboring houses. The HVAC and the other services that are shown on this drawing, of course, add another floor to the entire building massing. So we're really talking about a visible height of 7 stories, not 6 stories. 6 stories occupied, 7 stories for the services, including the use of the roof for leisure purposes. The leisure purposes themselves also add to the question of noise. Noise, as you know, does not travel sideways, it travels right out. For the people whose backyards it is, whether they're NIMBY or not, they are going to have neighbors looking over directly into their yards with the noise that they are going to be producing. This is not going to be pretty for them, and perhaps they should be looking to sell their properties now if this property plan goes forward. I'm concerned, so therefore my general expression is I'm concerned by the height. 6 stories on what is essentially a residential street at this time, of 2 merging into 3 stories. I find that strange. Sure, I'd like to maximize my profit. If I owned that land, I would want to maximize my profit. But from a planning standpoint, from a neighborhood standpoint, I could see an argument for 4 stories, pushing it up to 6 stories. Geez. I might point out in commentary that looking across the street to the public housing and its high-rise nature, that was built at a time when I guess having a mandate for public housing meant you could do anything. But all you could do now is walk around the area and to know what a blight that house, that building height is on the neighboring streets, and how the neighboring streets live in the shadow. And it's just one of those anomalies that is well known to Ottawa. Another anomaly that I'll mention in a moment, for a capital city, the state of the sidewalks on nearby streets. Good, great G7 capital that doesn't even have sidewalks within a 10-minute drive of the Parliament buildings. But the anomaly of that building should not be used as an excuse to justify what we're now trying to do with open eyes, and the justification for 6 stories based upon the anomaly of the public housing strikes me as a bit extreme. My third concern, parking. The fact is, like it or not, to get around the city and to get beyond the city requires individual mode of transportation. Parking space for each unit is sensible and realistic. The parking spaces as provided, it's better than nothing compared to a number of the individual house units that have gone up recently. But we're going to be faced with a parking problem, which will immediately be visited upon the people of Westview. I assume the people of Parkview. Hilson is already getting parked up. So I don't know where people will park their cars. Kirkwood is supposed to be more of an open corridor. There is a little bit of parking there, but not very much. Parking for the proposed businesses, Kirkwood currently has no businesses, not few businesses, but no businesses except for the Alcala Market, which has been there for time immemorial. And when Alcala, whatever it was, 35 years ago, had planned to open a restaurant, it was stopped. There's still that open space by Alcala. I assume if we start going into having businesses on Kirkwood from this building, there will be applications for other businesses on the street. Perhaps that's part of the city plan. I don't know. But the parking from those businesses will be very difficult. I'm concerned about the traffic load on Kirkwood Avenue. The architect's renderings, of course, show no traffic, just like it never shows any snow. The street, in fact, these days can be blocked from Carling and Kirkwood all the way down past Iona, going down, down, down. And even though some of that may be relieved when access to the Queensway is opened up again on Island Park Drive, with the additional building that is going to be coming up now at the corner of Richmond Road and Kirkwood, the street demand on Kirkwood is simply going to keep increasing and increasing. It has now become the major connector from the Queensway all the way down to Scott Street. So adding this amount of housing together with the limitation on the amount of parking, together with the potential for a business, I just see the demand on Kirkwood becoming, I look at Kirkwood these days and I see it as a new Parkdale. And I look at Carling and Kirkwood and it's a new Parkdale intersection. I can tell you now, even though I am primarily a pedestrian, secondly, a bicycle user, a cyclist, and then a car user, I can tell you now, I am already using workarounds to avoid Kirkwood. And I know many other people who are beginning to do so as well. The side streets and cutting over to Dovercourt by just going down and then cutting up again, they're getting used more and more. So street loading, and whether this takes into account any of the street loading, the last concern I'll express is with regard to the traffic on the neighboring streets. And here I will be a little bit NIMBY. I do live on Hilson, and Hilson at rush hour has become quite a busy street. A building of this size, with this amount of additional traffic to it, Hilson is simply going to become that secondary bypass to avoid the failed street of Carling and Kirkwood, the failed intersection of Carling and Kirkwood. And for Jeff Leeper, it's a failure of an intersection that's on your watch. So what the city will do, blaming the developer on this, and the developer is interested in using his land, I don't blame him or her. What the city will do to take into account that we now live in a city, not just a suburb of the old suburb of Nepean, to ensure that pedestrians have safety on Westview, and I dare say on Parkview, which is becoming quite dense, and certainly on Hilson with its hill, hence Hilson, and the building of sidewalks, compliant sidewalks, not sidewalks that you have to avoid because they have so many ruts in them, and everybody avoids the sidewalks on Hilson because they're so bad. What the city will do to take into account the densification that is now being created, whether it's a 4-story unit or a 6-story unit, that's something for the city to consider. How the city will deal with the failed intersection that's now emerging, that's another issue altogether.
Oh, sorry, I
Thank you.
thought you picked them up at the same time.
Okay, so I'll try to deal with those in order. I guess I'll start with the building height. So we've talked about it. I'm not going to belabor the point just for the interest of everybody, but the official plan does permit 6-story buildings on the minor corridor designation. This property is designated minor corridor in the official plan. So this is application is looking to rezone the property to use that official plan designation and to implement that through the zoning. So again, I won't belabor the point, but just that 6 stories is a permitted building height along the minor corridor, and this is within that designation. With respect to parking, the subject property required, and the number of units on the subject property is 76 that's being proposed. 32 parking spaces are required, and there's 52 being provided. 6 visitor parking spaces would be required, and 6 visitor parking spaces are provided. So just to note that we are meeting and exceeding the minimum requirements for parking. So we take your point, of course, that you don't feel it's necessarily sufficient, but just that the parking is there as required by provisions of the bylaw. With respect to screens on top of the building, that is more of an issue for site plans. That's going to come further down the road should this be the zoning be approved by Planning and Housing Committee and Council. But we'll certainly note that in our to our client as well as internally, just that's a concern from the community. And I'll also note that to your point about the noise of residents using the rooftop amenity area, it is designed currently that residents on the external rooftop part of the amenity area would be fronting on Kirkwood. So I would suggest that none of that noise would necessarily be carrying over into the east of the property. It would be screened by that penthouse. Not an expert in the area, of course, as a planner, but just noting that it's not actually on the rear of the property; it's on the front. And then also noting that noise studies would be required as well to satisfy requirements of the city through site plan. So I'll leave that one there. And then with respect to traffic, a traffic study has not been required for the zoning bylaw application. So we have not prepared one. So I can't speak to that. I'm obviously not an expert in transportation and traffic studies. But certainly that's something that we'll take back. Your concerns about traffic on Kirkwood. I think street loading was actually mentioned by the previous speaker, Lauren, as well. So again, we'll take that away with respect to construction and with respect to loading on Kirkwood, just to make that clear to our client and again internally. If this goes to site plan, that will be something that we'll need to consider. And I think that's everything. I'll also note we didn't respond to Lauren with respect to EV charging. I will also take that comment away to our client. I would suggest that probably there will be some spaces in the parking garage, but I don't know that detail yet. And it would be something that also comes up at site plan stage. So I think I'll leave it there.
The new zoning bylaw will have explicit EV charging requirements, and my encouragement to the developer would certainly be to adhere to those, and I'll probably make mention of that to the planner as well as they're considering the application.
Great, noted.
Awesome. And I think the EV charging question also answers Scott's question in the Q&A as well. Well, doesn't answer it here, but being taken away as well. I have a question that just popped up in the chat, but I did see before, Tara and Doug, you did have your hands up. So I'm going to hit the allow to talk button, but if you'd like to sort of decline that and if your question was answered, feel free.
Yes, hi, can you hear me okay? Yeah, so it's Dave here. We live on Westview right beside Adam. We're kind of kitty corner to this proposed development. I just want to make a comment about the parking, but Victor, and I get that the developer is providing more parking than what's required. But we've seen in our neighborhood, specifically with the new developments on Kirkwood, we have a lot of new kind of 3-story townhouses on our street on Westview, and they're also doing those on Parkview. And many people park on Westview already because of what's happened. The developments on Parkview, we had made a comment about that one about parking. They're parking on their front lawns. They're parking on the front side, like on the sidewalks. People are always doing the Ottawa 311 on them. It doesn't seem to help. I've seen many people park their vehicles on Westview and walk around to Parkview. So, like, our biggest concern is, there's 70 some odd units. There's only 50 parking spots. And I know the big catchphrase whenever this has been brought up in the past has been active transportation. And that's kind of what's always thrown back at us, that people will use active transportation. And the reality of it is they don't. I would say, just from what I've seen in our neighborhood, it's probably 1.5 cars per unit is reality. And that's what it is. And in the winter, Hilson is terrible. Westview is terrible because as they plow the roads, it gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And fire trucks can't get down there. Ambulances can't get down there. Garbage trucks have trouble. People park their cars overnight through the winter. Snowplow comes through and then they drive away. The number of times that I know Adam's done it and I've done it, where we've had to go out and snow blow the road ourselves because the plow's already gone by and somebody's pulled their car out. And nobody seems to come out and ticket these people or do anything about it. We've reported it. And this is only going to make it worse. We're the street right behind this new development. Guaranteed, people are going to be parking on Westview. They're going to be everywhere, anywhere close to that development. They're going to be parking on the roads, and like I said, it's already become an issue. And historically, just from these little higher, they're not as high a density as this, but it's already created a problem in our little neighborhood here. So you don't have to tell me that they're providing more parking or anything like that. We put this in our letter that we're going to be sending in, but I just wanted to stress that. So I did take my hand down because it was discussed before, but I figured that given the opportunity, I'll just reiterate it because it is a huge problem on our street.
We'll certainly take those comments back. Thanks for your comment.
Thanks, Doug and Tara. Matt, I see you have your hand up, but I've got a comment in the chat to go to first, and then I'll go over to you next. So in the chat, someone has said, under the official plan, Section 3 growth framework and the inner urban transect/minor corridor policies, including the direction that maximum heights are limits, not targets, allowing the city to limit built form on small, shallow lots based on lot fabric and existing context. How is an effectively 7-story mass only 14.5 meters, give or take, from 1 and 2 story homes at one of which I live in and own, compatible with the current low-rise neighborhood. And as a follow-up question, why does your submission characterize the building as 6 stories when the plans show a fully enclosed, elevator-serviced indoor amenity on the 7th floor and a mechanical penthouse above? So I'll put that to you, Jeff.
Okay, so again, I don't really want to belabor the point. I've kind of talked about, and I hope the resident that put that comment there was available during my explanation of the angular plane. But essentially that is the case that is being put forward. The building height is certainly permitted by the minor corridor policies to have up to 6 stories of building height in this location. We, in our professional planning opinion at Novatech, and me personally as a professional planner, just support the notion that the setbacks are adequate. The step backs of the building are adequate to provide that transition. There's screening and the angular plane provisions, which is intended to provide light and natural light and infiltration through the property to abutting lots to the east, has been provided as set out by not set out by provisions of the GM zone, but by kind of planning practice in general with respect to how those angular planes are applied. So that is being shown for this property. And again, not to belabor that point, but just to make the case there that we feel it is being provided, and that transition is being provided. And then with respect to, sorry, Steph, can you repeat the second part? I just wanted to make that point first.
No problem. Here, let me grab it verbatim. So why does your submission characterize the building as 6 stories when the plans show fully enclosed elevator service? So the projection for the amenity.
Understood. Yeah. Understood. Thanks, Steph. So yeah, it is characterized as a 6-story building, given that the penthouse on the roof is a permitted projection. Part of the relief that's being requested, or say specific provisions for this property that are being requested as part of the zoning bylaw application, is to permit the use of that space as amenity area, including a washroom on the roof of the building, which has been done across the city on numerous projects. But it's not a living space. It's not considered part of the actual building height itself. It is a permitted projection above the maximum building height of, I believe in this case we're requesting 20, but it's 19.5 on the plans shown before you today.
Thanks, Jeff. So I've got Matt's hand up. So Matt, if you'd like to go ahead and ask your question, and then we'll go to Victor in the question in the chat.
So I really appreciate the meeting we organized tonight, and yeah, appreciate the chance to learn more. Wanted to comment, we really support the increasing density in our neighborhood. We recognize when we bought the house, we live on Westview as well, that there would be a development going in, and we recognize the need for more housing. And Jeff, I know you've already spoken to the height, but I still want to add my voice to the concerns about the height. We live directly behind the building. We're Adam's neighbor to the other side from Tara and Doug. And, we anticipate that if this was approved, we'd be living in shade for the vast majority of the time, which is, quite disappointing, has a big impact. But not to belabor that point, I recognize it's been addressed. I think I appreciate that there'd be an effort made to preserve the tree. I would say that I'm quite concerned that, that won't be possible. And so those trees would, if there is development here, provide significant sort of screening and a really effective way of maintaining a bit of privacy for us. And I'm strongly concerned that the effect of the construction would be that those trees wouldn't survive. And so I just wanted to voice that those trees are quite important for maintaining our privacy. And we're really concerned that, the height is our major concern, but preserving the trees is really important to us as well.
Hi, and I'm sitting here with Matt. It's Maria Grending, and also a resident here on Westview. I would say part of the reason we're skeptical is looking at the plans, like the existing trees are described as a hedge, which I mean they're trees well above our two-story house. So like they're pretty significant trees. And the amount of space sort of allocated for them looking at the landscaping plan is almost zero. So I don't really see, it's hard just to accept that it would be credible that in this plan they would be maintained, and without them, like already even with the trees, it's to have 6 stories plus a seventh essentially right behind our fence, and no trees, and it was very difficult to grow them, given that the shade plan shows that from 1 or 2 p.m. every day we'd be in shadow of the building. It's really discouraging. We bought our house partly because it's got a nice light and a really nice place for our kids to play in the backyard. Lots of kids in the neighborhood, they all play on the street. So the traffic concerns, I'm concerned about parking personally, but the traffic concerns all around the street are certainly an issue because we're fortunate to have one of those neighborhoods where the kids all play on the street, kick the balls around, and are free to do so without us hovering. And they also make a lot of use of our backyards. And I guess we're just feeling, Jeff Kelly, I know you can't necessarily speak to it, but just feeling like we're going to lose so much quality of life if this proposal were to go through as is.
Understood. I'll just see if I can. I'll provide some comments there with respect to the trees. So, right now it is only a conceptual landscape plan. So it's not a full detailed landscape plan that will be submitted as part of a site plan application, with respect to all the different studies that go into preparing that. So certainly the intent is to try to retain as much of that as possible. Where it cannot be retained in terms of the hedges and trees that are currently there, they would be replaced in that location is what my expectation would be, just because of what's currently there and the intent of screening the property from the adjacent homes, one of which is yours. So that's kind of just the general overarching idea behind the trees. And then again, with respect to the height, I'm not going to belabor the point, but certainly we understand your concerns with respect to the building height in this location.
All right. If there's no other question or comment from Matt and everyone, we've got a hand up from. Give me 1 second. I'm only seeing the hand up right now, not who. Valeria. So I'll allow you to talk. Victor, I saw you put your hand down, but happy to come back to you if you'd like, and then go to your question. So Valeria, you should have gotten the prompt.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm a resident on Kirkwood, on the south of the proposed project. I fully understand all the concerns of the neighbors, and I kind of sign for every one of them. But I just wanted to add a few other things from the perspective of a person who has to deal with the traffic on Kirkwood. I took a picture and I submitted it actually to the city planner who is going to accept all our feedback. From yesterday morning, the street traffic in front of our property, all the way down along Dover Court and all the way from the Carling-Kirkwood intersection up to Clare, whatever you can see is full of cars around 8:50 in the morning. I cannot imagine another 58 cars coming somehow out of this exit of the parking, 2 stories underground parking, and joining this traffic, because we ourselves need sometimes 10-15 minutes wait from our driveway to get to the street. And it's very often kind of a risky getting out or getting in the driveway. So it's real kind of, if there is no mitigation of the traffic issue along this street, I just cannot see how this street can accommodate another 58 cars. Despite the fact that the minimum requirement for parking spaces is 32, I would like to ask what kind of studies would be conducted from the city or like from whoever has the authority to do that before they make a decision, because the fact that there is no study right now doesn't mean that that there doesn't have to be a study to see what's going on right now. Another concern that I could imagine is when the other new developments on Westview and Parkview happened, we've been in our property for 20 or more years, so the vibration of the existing building is significant. So I cannot imagine these big 6-7 stories monster, let's say, compared to the other properties around, being built without compromising the structures of the existing properties, especially the older ones, which are not that old, but they are kind of a lot on our street. So would this be also taken into consideration in making the decision, or like it's very nice to have a big plan, kind of maximizing the profit of the land, etc. But there are many other things that should be considered in this. And again, I'm for having a building there because it's very kind of disappointing just to see this empty lot. But I would imagine that this is kind of overkill for like too much for the capacity that this lot and our street can accommodate.
Understood. So I'll take a quick past that. So thanks for your comments, mainly with respect to traffic. Basically, just the comment would be that some of that will be dealt with through the site plan control process, should the application be approved for rezoning and to get to that stage. And that would certainly be something that we would be interested in as well. Just knowing, obviously knowing that there's capacity for cars on the street is an important concern. And I'll re-mention that it didn't come up as part of the screening for the zoning bylaw amendment application. So we haven't prepared a traffic study for at the time being, and that's just basically where I'll leave it. I guess concerns from residents might have a different or change that scenario for a site plan application, but at this point, there's nothing formal requested from the city.
Thanks, Jeff. Valeria, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free. If not, I'll move on to Victor. All right. So Victor, the floor is yours.
I put my essential questions into the chat, and I know that tonight has been set up, and I'm very grateful for being set up for us to give feedback to the developer. But the city is really a partner with the developer in this. I don't mean that you're in commercial partnership, but the city really has to provide for some of the mitigations and some of the planning, and not just say, oh, it's the developer's responsibility. So what I'm really asking about here is there any prospect of the city treating neighboring streets, and for that matter, treating the management of Kirkwood in some manner that respects densification, and just stop pretending that we're just the old Ottawa West, back 1950s. Yes, sometimes a car showed up. We're now a dense central part of the city. What is the city going to do to help take care of the kids who play on Westview? Because cars go zipping up and down Westview, and more cars are zipping up and down Westview. And there's another apartment building that's being built right now on Kirkwood, and I'm glad that it's being built. It's Kirkwood at the corner of Buell on the west side, and that's also going to be adding density on Kirkwood. So what is this?
So Victor, if I may?
Yes, please.
Yeah, and I do get it, right? So I'm looking out through my backyard to my neighbor's house, which fronts onto Parkdale. At the end of my block, they're putting in a 16-story tower, which is what I guess 8 houses away from me, on Wellington. The Wellington retirement community just went in kitty corner, and someone will build a 6-story building on the lot that is between me and Parkdale Avenue, and I certainly understand the concerns. And that is a choice that City Council has made with its eyes wide open, which is that our minor corridors, our corridors, our arterials will go taller, and those of us who are one street in from the arterial are going to have that density up there. And it's probably not going to be able to be possible to preserve the streets in the inner urban transect as quiet, low volume streets. The city is going to grow over the course of the next 25 years from 1 million to 1.4. To your point, Victor, when I was a kid, this is a city of 400,000 people, and now it's a million. When I moved into my house here on Hamilton 25 years ago, I could get onto the Queensway in about, depending what time of day it is, for anywhere from 45 seconds to a minute and a half. Today it's 10 minutes as the park as it backs up at Tyndall. And there is nothing that I could advocate the city can do to try to reduce that traffic, except ensure that we have adequate public transportation, which we do not today. And then, active transportation will take care of some of that as well, cycling and walking. I voted against the official plan in 2021, not because I oppose the intensification. I don't oppose a 6-story building going in behind me, which will happen, sometime certainly within the next decade or so, but because I am very cynical that the city of Ottawa is going to make the investments in the infrastructure that are necessary in order to mitigate the effects of that we're going to put in the pedestrian infrastructure, that we're going to put in the sidewalks, that we're going to put in the cycle tracks that will keep people who are cycling around corners like Carlin and Kirkwood, that require, if you're going to be able to cycle around those to get to the food basics, etc., proper cycling infrastructure, proper sidewalks. Many of our streets in Westboro continue to be built according to rural standards, and don't have a hope of a sidewalk for the next 20, 30 years. So I am actually quite cynical, Victor, that we will make the infrastructure investments necessary to make intensification livable. That doesn't mean we can refuse the intensification. If City Council refuses this application, which clearly meets with the official plan policies that we have, the developer will take that to the OLT, and the OLT will rubber stamp the approval. The intensification is coming, and we just need a different direction on the part of council to make the investments in the infrastructure we need in order to make that livable. I'll leave it there. I'm not here to defend the city by any means. I don't work for it.
You just put your finger on it. Our part of Westboro, Laurentian View, as it was once called,
Yep.
is built to rural standards. Yep. It's a joke.
There will be some, I can take a look at this with residents offline because I don't want to take up everyone's time tonight. The pipes are getting to an age in many parts of the ward. Victor, you've been there a long time. When was the street rebuilt, like completely down to the ground, put new pipes in and everything? Not in your lifetime?
Just after the war, I was told by an old neighbor who's now gone, to Hilson in the Sky, they made an extension of Hilson from where the hill began.
Yeah.
And it began because the Ottawa Hydro dropped 2 houses there. And a footpath was paved over, and that became Hilson Avenue, the Hilson Avenue extension.
Okay.
It may explain why the snow blowers from the city still don't extend up to the end of Hilson, the southern end of Hilson, because they have a snow clearing plan from 1951. So
I wouldn't put it past them.
It's extraordinary. The man who told me this was in military intelligence, and he knew what was going on everywhere. Yeah.
But do you how old are the pipes that are under there? Because if they're approaching 70, 80 years old, then your street will be rebuilt. And when it gets rebuilt, I'm very happy with the way they rebuild them.
I'm concerned as much about Westview, which is a somewhat newer street, mid
Yeah.
1950s,
Yeah.
and the kids playing basketball on the street and kids playing hockey. And I drive very slowly because I'm a neighbor.
Yeah.
People
We
who are
can
attempting to bypass the buildup of traffic now on Kirkwood don't drive as slowly.
yeah.
There is a real problem that has emerged in addition to the issue about the site plan, which Jeff Kelly is happily sitting back now and saying, oh, well, we're talking municipal stuff. So
We can slow the speed of traffic on Westview down with traffic calming measures, at least for 3 seasons of the year. And when it gets rebuilt, we can significantly calm it down. But I can't tell you, and no counselor across certainly the interurban transect that Jeff referred to earlier, none of us can tell you that we're going to be able to manage the volume of traffic. It will get busier as we go from a city of, when I was a kid, 400,000 people, to a city of 1 million, to a city of 1.4 million. The streets in closest to downtown will get busier.
I grew up in Montreal. I know streets with the sidewalks on both sides and parking on both sides, and we still play football on the street. But the streets were built to be city streets,
Yeah.
not to be pretend country streets.
No, when we rebuild Westview, it'll be built to urban standards. It'll have sidewalks. It'll be built to if you have a chance to take a look at Huron, for instance, it was a hard-fought win in the last term of council where we are designing the streets to slow the traffic down to 30 kilometers an hour, and it's working well and I've seen quite a few rebuilds go through right now. But sorry, we could probably talk about this all night.
Right. Yeah.
This is the opportunity to ask questions that will help you forge your arguments either for or against the plan with the city planner, who has to make a recommendation to council.
And I beg everyone's indulgence. I'm going to have to leave. I have grandchildren here.
Thanks,
Thank
Victor.
you all very much.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night, Victor. All right, with that, we've got a couple more questions in the chat, so I'm going to ask those, and I'll go to you, Lauren. So AS asks, what are the map critical root zones each boundary tree, and how will excavation, shoring, and dewatering be kept out of those CRZs? And there's a question after that, Jeff, but if you want to speak to it, I know it's usually a bit more of a site plan question, though.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Steph. It's not really something I can answer right now. We don't have a detailed landscape plan, and we're not at the site plan stage, so it would be something that comes up if the applications are. But this application is approved for rezoning. The next step would be to submit a site plan application where that question would be answered.
But is it even practical to say that you could preserve those trees when the structure underground is going to be 1.7 meters from the lot line?
So I never stated that we could say them. I said we would if we could, and that was the intent of what's being proposed. If any of the shrubs or trees could be preserved, they will be, and that's basically where we stand at this point. Subject to further study.
I get it, but there's no way that you're going to save a mature tree with a 1.7 meter setback from the tree going down two stories. Like, it's just not. Like, you could say you're going to try, and I could try too. I could try to cut the tree down and save it, but it's not going to happen.
Right. Your concerns are acknowledged.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know you're speaking right now, AS, but I know your next question was, will there be space on site for waste bins, staging, and a truck to enter, load, and leave without using or blocking Kirkwood, and what are the city requirements for this? So I'll put it to you, Jeff, first, and then
so again, it's more of a site plan comment and issue that would be dealt with at that stage. There is a garbage room inside the building in the underground garage. Typically, it's collected with a winch or some type of system like that. Not sure exactly the mechanics of how that would work. It would be dealt with at site plan stage. So can't answer that question right now until we get to that point.
And
I'm
we,
just wondering if anybody could comment on what the city requirements for that would be.
so for the city requirements, it tends to happen a bit closer to when the construction is actually going to get underway with building permit. And Jeff Lieber can correct me where I'm wrong, but we get a traffic management plan that tends to be right before those building permits get pulled. So we wouldn't really have those right now.
But
Jeff?
would the city generally permit collecting garbage on the street? Like moving those bins, staging them on the street, and then having the garbage trucks stop on the active lanes of traffic there to pick them up?
We're going to have to get back to you on that, AS. I believe that the city would allow that garbage collection to occur in the streets, so they'll winch the because there's not going to be any room otherwise, right? So they're going to have to winch the bins into the street and then stop traffic while they lift those into the truck. And like that happens all over the city right now. But if you're at my office, we'll get you the written regulations and policies and rules and everything. So you just have those for sure.
Great, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And with that, we've got our last hand raised. So Lauren, if you'd like to go ahead.
Can you still hear me? Okay. Just a few more new points and a few comments on some of the stuff that's come up. One, it seems to be a big issue, is cars. And I was kind of surprised that there was no traffic study, just a traffic noise study. Given that there is a Queensway exit and entrance at the bottom of Kirkwood, the amount of traffic during rush hour, going in both rush hours, going to the Queensway and coming from the Queensway, getting onto Kirkwood is extremely difficult in the morning and around between about 3:30 and 6 o'clock. So cars coming in and out of this building is only going to make it a lot worse. So I just want to reiterate that. Question of not enough parking in the building. This is a growing problem in our neighborhood, and it's not so much the problem of the developer, it's a problem that the city ignores. I've raised it several times. If we're not going to put in enough parking for these developments, then the city should be charging for street parking in our neighborhood. The same way they do is in the Glebe and Centertown. I've raised this for years and it's been ignored. We have paid parking now on our main street, which will be interesting to see what that does to our businesses, but we should be putting it into our neighborhoods now. I'm not as familiar with the Westview, but I go up and down Parkview, and that street is a mess because of the four unit buildings that went in, 16 units with 2 or 3 parking spaces in the back. People are not giving up their cars. And for the city hall to pretend that's going to happen is ridiculous. We have a federal government that's trying to save our car industry. And they're not trying to save it so people stop buying cars. They recognize people will buy cars. They might not be gas, but they'll be EV. I don't know if the risk to the trees in the back is mainly because of excavation for the parking garage, but I do note that the 3 back units and a general terrace are very big terraces, paved space. And I would say if those are competing with existing trees, those terraces should go and keep the existing trees. Because those are pretty big terraces and far bigger than anybody's balcony is going to be. So I'd say cut those back as much as you have to save trees if you can. If the trees are more at risk from the excavation of the parking garage, that's a different story. There was a question about the impact of the rooftop terrace on the neighbors. From my understanding of looking at the schematics, it looks like the public amenity space is all on the Kirkwood side. and that the residents will not be overlooking the backyards of Westview. Is that correct?
That is correct, based on the current concept plan, yes.
Okay, so hopefully that doesn't change. And no discussion. Currently, and when it was a synagogue, you had a building and a lot of green space. This is going to be almost completely paved over. What's going to be taken into account for all the runoff?
So
didn't
again,
see
it's
in the
a
water study there. Or...
it's a site plan concern. So that would be dealt with at site plan stage. And again, this is obviously just for rezoning. So we'll put that in a takeaway list. I have it written down here just for consideration.
Okay. And my last question, which is, I guess, sort of a catch-all summary question. It's not so much about what's being proposed. This is for Jeff Lieber's office. What is the process going forward? When do you need comments by? When is it going to the planning committee? It sort of got, there's a lot of comments that came up. Sometimes you go to these and the developer says, I'm not making that change. The developer's not here, so we have no clue what changes, if any, the developer will make. But Jeff Kelly's taking copious notes, and at least we'll raise it. But we don't know what changes will come out of this meeting or other discussions you've had or other letters that have been submitted. So, can you talk a little bit about the process going forward from here?
Yeah, and I'll ask Jeff about the timing because it's he will probably have better insight, but there will be a date by which the planner generally needs comments in order to be able to provide comments back to the developer. So that if the planner has concerns about the proposal and where it does or it does not meet with the various plans that we have for development in the city, those will come. I'm imagining this one is probably going to work its way through fairly quickly. So what is the comment date? Just to give me an idea.
It's actually
Steph?
tomorrow.
Yeah, Steph
Okay.
might know better. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll ignore it's tomorrow. But obviously the planner will take comments for probably the next couple of weeks. I would suggest if you're going to have comments that are substantial to the planner that are rooted in zoning bylaw and OP issues. And I very much appreciate some of the notes I've seen where some of the residents who are here tonight have written their concerns in terms of where they consider it does not adhere to particular sections of the official plan. That's the most helpful commentary that you can provide to the planner. Get that within a couple of weeks. And then there's usually a back and forth between the developer and the city planner before the planner considers that enough of their concerns are satisfied to the point where they can make a recommendation to approve it. So what are you thinking in terms of a committee date, Jeff? Is this something that's within committee or in front of committee within the next 4 or 5 months?
Certainly 4 or 5 months. We'll just basically see what comments come back from the planner and make our responses to those, and then see how quickly we can move forward. Just basically saying quickly because we've been sitting on this for quite some time. So I know the applicant or the developer is looking to move forward with the rezoning. So certainly as quickly as is possible, and definitely within 4 to 6 months.
Okay. So my suggestion to residents would be to get your comments in with the next couple of months, and then given council and the mayor's new thrust towards fast approvals and working their way through the development review process quickly, it could even be like 90 days, or sorry, not 90 days, 3 months before once we see something go in front of the committee. At which point you're no longer talking to the planner. Once they have issued a recommendation to approve, at that point it becomes a political decision, and you need to lobby me and my colleagues on the planning committee one way or the other. So leading into the vote. But I fully expect, I'm not seeing anything here where the planner's going to have major sort of this is overreach, this is not what the official plan says type concerns. So I wouldn't be surprised if we were in front of committee in the next 4 or 5 months.
I know neighbors don't like to hear this, And these developments are egregious if you can be egregious if you're living next to them. But years of being involved with this, you sort of get a sense what's going to go through at City Hall and what's not. And I think at best, if we have a developer who's willing to tweak things to make this as best as possible, that's probably what we should be aiming for.
There's a couple of things that residents have raised with respect to, certainly the location of the mechanical, the location of the rooftop amenity. I'm interested in the side yard setbacks, although on the main street, I'm not sure. In a CM or future CM currently being proposed to be a GM zone, that's a concern. But I do want to follow that up a little bit more with Stephanie and with the city planners. Um, I tend to agree with AS. The trees, by the time they're done excavating this, I'm not sure they're going to be able to preserve those. Um, but is there a tree information report as part of the application package already, or is that coming? Or that'll come at site plan?
Site plan, we did not require it for this. It's only a conceptual landscape plan.
Okay, so there's no TIR yet. And I'm interested in knowing what those trees are. And actually, Jeff, if you could, without necessarily having to go to a TIR ahead of site plan, if you could just let me know what those trees are, and maybe if neighbors write to me as well, I'm interested in that. Um, but the basics of this proposal, a 6-story building on a minor corridor is as far as I can tell, completely supported by official plan policy. And like I say, I know how uncomfortable that is for neighbors. I'm looking out at the property that faces Parkdale, and 6 stories doesn't seem like a gentle transition to me, but in city planning terms, that is. Yeah, so I'll leave that there. So, and then once the planner makes a recommendation, we'll have to make at committee, we'll vote on it. That'll go to city council, which generally rubber stamps whatever the committee decides. So your opportunity to speak to the politicians, me and my colleagues, is at that planning committee meeting, at which we will vote on the city planner's recommendation to either approve and refuse. And it would be very, very rare for a planner's recommendation to refuse something to actually move to a vote, because generally the developer knows that committee will uphold a refusal recommendation, so there's no point moving forward with that. Yeah, and in terms of the larger sort of car and traffic issue, it's not the developer's issue to solve, unfortunately. But I would just point out 40% of people in our ward, so that's in Kitchissippi Ward, 40% of people who live in Kitchissippi Ward in multi-residential, so in apartment buildings and condo buildings, do not have a car. And that's data. That's not perception. That's data. So the fact that they're going with what is it? It's well over a 0.5, eh? You're at 38 out of 58?
Yeah. I'll give you the number. I have it just to make sure. Yeah, it's 52 required. Sorry, 52 provided, 32 provided. So, sorry, 32 required, 52 provided.
So 32 vehicles, so that's going to generate sort of AM peak trips of probably 18 or something like that by the time it's done. If residents want to talk to me more about this one-on-one, I am more than happy to have those conversations about how the city planning process works and where this application is likely to go.
Here's a bizarre idea. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. No, please go.
Jeff Kelly.
Yep.
Could the developer speak to Hampton Moorgard, who owns Hampton Plaza, to see if they can rent some parking spaces there?
So it's an interesting notion. That is particularly on the smaller infill projects that we do when they have no parking. It's always something that we bring up. If residents are not going to have a car, or they're going to have a car and have to park it somewhere else, basically just to try to avoid getting a ticket on the street or getting their car towed or whatever it is. Because on title, it's usually noted that, you don't necessarily have access to a car guaranteed to you. So maybe that's something that's done here as well. And there's some kind of deal with an offsite location. And like I said at the outset, I think you might have been here for that part of it, Lauren. The our client actually started with one level of underground parking and realized
Yep.
that he probably needed to provide two just to make it work from a business
Yes.
perspective. So
As I
that
was-
change has already been made, and I don't know if there's going to be more provided, but definitely he's aware of the issue that could be presented here. So it's something to definitely take away and speak about with our client.
Yes, I think above the gradient wind roadway traffic noise assessment actually talks about just one level of parking. So it wasn't updated to include two levels from at least a quote that I saw on one page.
And then Lauren, just to your other question, once we pass the comprehensive zoning bylaw review, that'll trigger a permit parking review as well. Because our policies with respect to parking and permit parking and that sort of stuff hasn't really been looked at since 2011. So all of the inner urban transit councilors and even some of the outer urban transit councilors are hearing that need to start introducing a lot more permit parking as we eliminate the minimum parking requirements in most of the transects.
I think I haven't followed it that closely at the FCA. I just keep track of their money, but I believe that there is discussion about allowed like private parking structures for developments without sufficient parking.
I'm cynical, but except in the core transect, the new zoning bylaw will allow for private lots to be used in a transitional way. But if a developer has multiple lots or multiple developers want to get together and share a lot, they would be allowed to put small parking lots in the neighborhoods to handle some of that overflow. Architects like Rosalind Hill have been pushing this hard as a potential solution to some of the parking issues, while so many people still have cars. I'm cynical that a developer who owns a lot in Westboro is going to find that offering it up as surface parking is a better value than developing it. But we're being open to it. We're going to enable it through the zoning bylaw.
Also, said like Hampton Plaza probably could come up with 20 spots on their site that wouldn't really affect the ability to access their stores and services.
Yeah, I'm interested in what happens to that strip mall, right? I mean, it's basically a grocery store and a strip mall. A number of the REITs are backing off now some of their intensification projects, but at some point you also got to figure that one's going to be proposed right on Carling as a taller, denser development. So it'll be interesting to see, but that's probably years and years away. And I'm sure the money they get from buying Food Basics is probably that's a tidy revenue stream, nice and predictable. Amazing. Everyone, my office is here to help. Whether we agree or not, Stephanie and Alice in my office are here to help you craft your best arguments in ways that are most likely to sway the city planner to make a recommendation one way or the other. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Jeff, thank you very much for taking the time tonight to answer those questions. And everyone, we'll have this link up online soon. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good night. Bye.
Night, everyone.
Thank you.